Hello and welcome to Live Out Your Potential podcast series, and I am your host, Rose Niraneza. Today, we're going to discuss an essential aspect of our lives that goes quite unnoticed. And this specific topic today is called occupational wellness. And what we're going to go through now and in the next episodes to come is look at what occupational wellness is. It isn't just about the work we do. It is about how we feel, about our work, how it affects our lives, and also how it aligns with our values and goals. But I won't be talking about this alone. I have a wonderful guest with me this morning, and I want to give her some few minutes to introduce herself, explain the type of work that you do and how you're going to be linked with Solid Minds, and then also give us a bit of more understanding about the specific work that you do, because the work you do is quite novice and new and also a growing field in mental health. So this is now your time.
Thank you, Rose. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Perpetua Mundi. I'm a practicing occupational therapist, a consultant at Solid Minds. And the term occupational therapy, as you said, is quite new in some spaces. Even in the medical world, sometimes we try and explain what we do even to our colleagues. So I can narrow down what occupational therapy is. So occupational therapy is a client-centered occupation-directed intervention where we use therapeutic activities, where everyday things to help people achieve what they really want to achieve. And everyday activities, we call them occupation. So if we just simplify it that way, that is what I can term as occupational therapy. And then an occupational therapist practitioner is one who enables people to just do what they want to do on every single day in a meaningful and purposive way.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really beautiful way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because I know oftentimes occupational therapy is looked as like supporting people with day-to-day activities. I wanted to know, how would a work day look like for you, for example, if you could share with us?
Yes. So on my end, my normal typical work day would look like this. So I work mainly with the pediatric clients, but in terms of experience, we do all levels of ages. Okay. But my normal day I wake up, I go attend a session. It can be within a center setting. It can be in a school setting. It can be in a home setting. And the session now, we use activities like play, games, writing activities to enable the students achieve what they need to achieve. And sometimes a normal work day would be doing consulting for different companies, being able to help them see angles in which they can implement occupational therapy interventions to be able to help a wider range of people. Because the clients we deal with is just not only the one client, we also deal with the community, we also deal with groups of people. So the normal work day can be very diverse. At one moment, I'm online doing a workshop or training for parents, for policy makers. So it's quite diverse. So my normal work day is never the same for every day, but it's so much fun.
Do you find it difficult to have that balance, given that the work you do is quite flexible? Can you share with us, how do you manage balancing a very flexible work style, given that you work with different ages, with different types of environments? You mentioned children, but also with governments and institutions, for example. So how do you find that balance for yourself?
It's hard to say I found balance. It's just we keep on trying to find balance. Okay. So finding balance looks like I enjoy making meals at home. So I'll make breakfast and I'll be home to make supper. So making meals is one of my ways to just chill down and just relax. Spending time with my kids and husband is also another way that I like making use of my time and just relaxing and engaging in a recreational activity. I used to do recreation running. So being in a group that does something else other than work has really helped. And then the organizational skills, I am heavily relying on planning, though sometimes it fails me, but I heavily rely on it in terms of workload. You get to know, this is what I need to do next week, the other week, this week I need to travel. So it helps me plan and helps the other people around me know.
So you actually gave us some interesting examples of things that you do personally.
Yes.
And I think it falls down into the well-being and wellness activities and practices that you hold. So in light of our topic today, could you give us a little definition of how you would define occupational wellness.
So occupational wellness, if I base it on what we do now as occupational therapy, I would say it's the ability to perform occupation as a result of choice, motivation, and meaning within a supported context. Why I phrased this that way is because we need to have a choice in our occupation. If you do something you did not have a choice over, you're not motivated to do it. If I just tell you, Rose, now let's go, you become, I change your career line, I say, help me teach. You see, if you did it not out of choice, then motivation is affected. So choice is a very important part of occupational wellness. And then supported context and environment, where the environment supports you to do what you do best. So the environment is conducive, the environment is supportive, the environment has no barriers, the environment is quite clear of barriers. So that's how I would define it.
That's a very interesting definition. In a context or in a culture where barriers or those types of boundaries can be hard to put in place, how do you encourage people to set those types of barriers, or like to identify what those barriers could be? Especially like we both come from East African countries,
Yes.
and such things are not really talked about or even discussed much. So how could you start to encourage people to start thinking about occupational wellness in their workspaces?
So the thinking starts from a reflection bit, where one has to start with reflecting. Am I okay in my occupation? Am I happy? Is there anything that is working? Is there something that is not working? So it starts from a point of reflection, and then it starts from a point of understanding where you are in terms of culturally. There are some spaces we have to really observe who is our senior, how do we approach them, which generation are they. If my senior is a millennial, there's a way I'll approach them. But if my senior is a boomer, then I know how to approach them. So you have to also take time to really understand the various communities or the various age sets that are above you in terms of workspace or wherever you are. Then now from there you are able to analyze and say, I know this is the boundary that would feel most comfortable within this space. Even if I need to put some certain form of boundaries, how do I best communicate? If let's say, for example, it's about time, we have a long work day at work. Can I start negotiating? If I finish this work by this time, is there a possibility I can leave either by, if maybe you're leaving at 7, if I come in by 5, maybe you're more productive in the morning. I had a colleague who did that. She used to go in a little bit earlier. She checks in by 4 or 5, and by 3 she's out of the office. But she negotiated her way, even with the various levels of leadership within the system.
I see.
So it's just getting to see, to analyze, and then how do you maneuver your way around it.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
In the previous segment, you gave us a bit of a definition and how you could define occupational wellness and also how it can be applied. But I think one of the questions that I have for you is, why should we start having conversations about the importance of occupational wellness? So for you, why do you think it's important to have occupational wellness?
Occupational wellness, if I can be able to look at it, it's just the ability of someone being able to thrive. So I equal occupational wellness to thriving. So it's quite important that if we need to thrive within our spaces, then we should have occupational wellness. This brings us to the place where when we have occupational wellness, now it links to solid minds. It means then we have mental wellness, we are emotionally stable, we have just a happy life emotionally. We're able to engage and interact. Apart from ourselves, we're engaging with others within the community. So it's quite holistic. If you have occupational wellness, I would equate it to thriving.
Oh, that's a really beautiful way to look at it. I think when it comes to the importance, I think one of the challenges that a lot of occupations or even individuals have is, what are some strategies and practices can we start looking into when we talk about occupational wellness? In the previous segment that we had, you talked about the importance of reflection, being mindful where we are. Would you consider that as part of the strategies to implement, or is there step by step? Is there a breakdown? Could you share with us a little bit about what practices and strategies are important and vital for occupational wellness?
So one of the strategies in the aspect of the reflection, there are those tests that we can have accessible. People can actually start assessing themselves if they're able to do what they need to do. And one is the occupational self-assessment. So you just do the test and it helps you be able to check and see, am I able to do my occupations quite well? And the other thing is the aspects of analyzing what you do in terms of the strategies. The other strategy would be the aspect of looking at your environment. What are some of the barriers? Because I think sometimes what are some of the facilitators and what are some of the barriers? Because in terms of occupational wellness, there are those two factors. There are things that will bar you from accessing occupational wellness, and there are facilitators. So increasing on the facilitators and remediating on the barriers. And if there are barriers we cannot move by ourselves or we cannot overcome by ourselves, now seeking that external support, counseling services and things like that to be able to help you to overcome those barriers.
What are some common barriers that you've observed from different spaces that you've worked in that you could share with us today?
Yeah. So the environmental factors, one is the availability of resources.
Right.
Do you have the resources you need to do your work? Do you have not only tangible resource, the human resource? Do you have an extra person at your office to help you with your work, or are you having work overload? Are you having burnout because of not having that human resource? There's also the aspect of do we have this emotional support and the psychosocial support even within our workspaces to be able to do the work effectively? So there are those factors, the environmental factors. There's also the aspect of the support in terms of your own initiative. Are you motivated to be able to do that work? And then in terms of the community, based on what you're doing, what are the stigmas that are around your workspaces? You know, there are generally stigmas in every workspace.
That's true.
So stigma is also a barrier. It will not help you achieve. And then also there's the barrier, one that is within ourselves, the client factor barrier, is if we are not well physically. If there's something wrong with us, if there's something that is not working really well with us, it's actually a barrier to achieve occupational wellness. So when we look at those various factors that could affect us, then we're able to say, okay, I think one of my barriers is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think one of my barriers is motivation. It's burnout. It's lack of organizational structures. It's lack of being able to plan. I'm having difficulties with scheduling work. I'm having difficulties with achieving because I'm understaffed. Because you might have the best of plans, but if you are alone in that department, then you're not able to achieve as much. Right. So there are those other, those would be the major ones, but there are those minor barriers that one might have, either traumatic experiences one has ever experienced, that sometimes at work you're getting triggers of what happened or the traumatic experience. So there are those that can come in different facets, but the really tangible ones are some of the ones I've mentioned.
Yeah, thank you so much for breaking down, you called major versus minor factors and barriers. I wanted to ask, when someone or even maybe those around this individual in this space, this workspace, is able to identify their barriers, what would you advise would be the next step once those barriers have been noticed and identified?
So first is to be able to really analyze, am I able to really work through this by myself, or do I need external help? So that's the first thing, just to be able to realize, am I able to do it by myself, or do I need external support? And if you need external support, then you reach out to the right support. People who will have within their team a great array of counselors, a great array of professions and interests within the counseling team to be able to help you come out of the difficulties. But some barriers you can actually overcome yourself. Let's say, for example, you are feeling overloaded because maybe you reach work late, and then when you reach late, then there's pressure to achieve what you need to achieve in the day. Then that one just comes to self-planning. How do you plan, or how do you get tools to help you plan? And I think that's where occupational therapists can really come as a major support system, where they help you look through your day and get to see what are some of the things we can implement that will help you plan better, help you achieve better, and things like that.
Yeah, it's helpful. I have a question that might be, I wouldn't say it's a trigger, or like maybe it might resonate with some of our viewers. But let's say there's a person in that workspace who identifies that there's a barrier, who needs external support, but then realize the external support might not be supportive actually. So how would you help this individual who has a hard time finding the proper support when they realize that there are barriers that are affecting their performance at work?
Because I would still want to find out, why is the external support not supportive? Is it the matching of the support? If it's a counselor, could there be a switch of the counselor? Could this positively affect this? So for me, I would go down to, why is the support not effective? Then now when we implement the moving forward, it will be out of knowledge. So I would go with the why. So I would find out, why is this support not effective? Yet it is there. So why is it not effective?
That's interesting, because I think the reason why I mentioned that question is because I know in a lot of cultures and countries, seeking support is something that's looked as a taboo and looked down upon.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, how could we, or what advice would you give to someone who is afraid to reach out to support? Even if the support is positive and healthy and they're willing to support them, how could you encourage that specific individual to actually reach out to those around them to seek support?
So for me, it's now dealing with the stigma. It's just creating more awareness opportunities. Hey, I came up through this resource. It says this. What do you think? So building more on the awareness, sharing in a confidential way that so-and-so, or I have a friend, you know, the way we have that phrase, I have a friend. I have a friend who was having this difficulty and they went through this and they got better. What do you think of such a thing? So I've not told them that it is working. I haven't told them that, look, so-and-so has this challenge, but I've just mentioned that it's very possible that you can get support and get access. So I would go more to the awareness, because when someone feels it's already a stigma, then they won't do it, or if they do it, they still will not achieve much in it. So it's just that awareness, and then also create opportunities for group intervention where it's a whole group, me, you, them, we go and we pay for a session. We say, we've paid for a group session, would you like to join us? So group perspective breaks it down a little. It doesn't feel so intrusive, and it doesn't feel like it's only me who's being helped. And then the shared experiences makes a huge difference, where we now share experiences. They hear someone saying they had difficulties with this last year, I had difficulties with this year, and this I've overcome. So shared experiences, even just recommending to them books. You know, you can actually share with someone a book and actually build something, or helps them to get the right form of help. So it's just building on their resources, creating that awareness, keeping on just checking on them, and being able to just support them through the journey.
That's wonderful. I wanted to ask you if it's possible to give that exact same advice, but in a different setting. Because here we look at more adults.
Yes.
But I know occupational therapists, you do work with children. So I wanted to ask, how would it look like trying to give the same advice, but in a children's setting?
Yes. So when I look at children, first I identify their occupation. So their occupation is just to play and go to school for those ones in school. So when you look at their occupation, that means occupational wellness for them would mean being able to play effectively, being able to go to school effectively. So when now we look at where is the problem? When a child is having difficulties with school, or difficulties with play, difficulties with engaging with their siblings or family, then that's where we are able to intervene. And now building on the occupational wellness is to be able to help them achieve all what they can achieve, even in a multidisciplinary setting, meaning that you can work as a team.
Right.
It can be a counselor, the occupational therapist, the physiotherapist, the speech therapist. You're all geared to help this child. So an example of how to engage such conversations with children is even through play, like when you play with them and you create like a role play or a make-believe story, a social story, where you have two teddy bears that were fighting. One got sad, one was able to share what was happening, one wasn't able to share what was happening. And this one who wasn't able to share what was happening, at the end of the day, they were sad, they were gloomy, things didn't go well for them, they didn't sleep well. So you've just broken down what happens if you don't emotionally share what's happening, or you don't share your grievances. Then you see, so which teddy bear would you want to be? So we've mirrored to the children what is it that would have helped. So it helped them with their social skills, then futuristic helps them with their occupational wellness. They get to know in this school setting when something that hinders my occupation happens, I have alternatives, I have options. So there's the teaching through stories, teaching through role play, teaching through modeling, because sometimes they'll hear you talk about things. If you're not happy, you'll say, today I'm not happy, so and so did what, but it's okay, I'll get better. But I'm not happy today, I'll see how I'll get better later. But maybe if I go for my workout, I'll feel better. So even just the modeling, they learn a lot through what they see.
That's really beautiful. And I like how you mentioned that they learn a lot through what they see.
Yes.
And a lot of the work you do with children is about observing their behavior, because a lot of the verbal communication might not be advanced for a lot of the children you work with, but seeing their body language, how they interact with peers of their own age, or even with you as the occupational therapist, it does say a lot about where they are, and observing and assessing the areas that need to be improved, and making sure that they're able to play and socialize effectively.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask, oftentimes when we look at workspaces, we look at adults, and I love that you talked about children, but there's a space that tends to be underlooked, which is university students. So I wanted to hear from you, how would you support, or how would occupational therapy for university students look like?
So for university students, I view them in an interesting way. So when I look at students, I see students who maybe are just from high school, went straight to university. I see those who had to work through their way to university. They had to work before going to university. I see students who are still working and raising their own money to be in university. I see students who are doing hybrid learning, where they're online and on-site. And then I see students who are online. So when I look at that whole scope, it's actually occupational wellness. They have lots of roles and responsibilities, different variety, but the output should be the same. That you should all deliver, you should all do your work, you should all finish your units, you should all do your exams. So when we're dealing with university students and thinking of their occupational well-being, we might need to really look at who is the student. Is it a mother? Is it a father? Do they have other responsibilities? Is it out of choice? Sometimes we're in university because our parents told us to do a certain course, and I'm not motivated. So I'm not doing well, not because I'm not bright, but it's because I'm just not motivated to learn. So for me, when I look at occupational wellness, I would encourage us to go down to the individual groups that are in university. And let's not forget the online learners, because they also have aspects of occupational wellness. Because imagine for them to be in that online class, they had to do either a day job. And sometimes I have colleagues who are doing PhD classes in different countries. So he has to wake up at 3. And that's the start of his day, and that's it. And he has toddlers, he has a newborn. So there's a lot of aspects of their occupational wellness we miss out in terms of the university. So for me, university and occupational wellness is such a huge topic. And when we now take time to look deeper, we might find there are spaces they are coping on well, but we might find there are areas they're not doing so well. And remember, occupational wellness is about that balance of everything. The trial of balance, because I think balance is hard, but that being able to balance in all spheres, in your activities of daily living, your bathing, your grooming, your showering, in your instrumental activities of daily living, your leisure, your sport, your play, social engagement. So if we look at the university student, we need to see a form of balance in all that spaces. And then when we look at it, we say, okay, we feel this one, there's a balance. But when we feel like there's only one side that is being attended to, which is just education, within the occupation space, education is just one area. So if it's just one area that we are focusing on, then we miss out. So I think it's just changing of lenses when we look at the university student and getting to see how do we capture all those students, because they are all students, and ensure that they have the right kind of wellness.
That's really beautifully put, and thank you for sharing that. I really liked how you mentioned the trial of balance, that when you're looking at supporting an individual or even a group of university students or even adults and children, it's really looking at it from a balanced perspective. of trying to put everything, all areas of their lives in a way of how do we make sure that everything is flowing well and not necessarily like one has to be up and the other has to be down. There's no percentage for everything. So thank you for sharing that.
Most welcome.
When we looked at all that you've mentioned, which was really laid out beautifully, one question that came to mind is really two. One question that I thought about was, how does achieving occupational wellness contribute to other dimensions of wellness? For example, emotional, social. And I wanted to ask you, how would that look like for you? If you can give us maybe an example of that as well for our audience who's listening.
So I can give an example based on a case study. I was working with a student who was having difficulties with occupational wellness, meaning his studies in school. And the challenge he had was he had a condition called dyscalculia or dyscalculia, depends on how you say it. But the problem is when one has that condition, you're not able to really calculate really well, and math concepts become very hard to process. So this was really stressing him a lot. And then also there was that aspect of the executive functioning, the planning, the organizing, and how his day flowing was having difficulties. So what we did was first the analysis of where he was. What is currently working well for you? What are you having difficulties with? And then the intervention started from a place of life plan. Let's set out a life plan. Math is part of your life plan, yes. But how do we look at other facets of your life? So when we worked on the life plan, it was short-term, long-term. And then we got to now start discovering things like planners. How can he make use of his school planner? And he started making use of his school planner, taking more notes, taking more like assignments now. He was able now to know this I have, this I don't have. Then we now went further to target the timings for his homework. If it's on Monday, what will you do? If it's on Tuesday, how do you do? How much time will you have for homework and things like that? What time will you wake up? So how do we ensure you don't leave your bag? Because there's that aspect of losing things and leaving things behind. So what will you use to make sure you keep tabs of your things? So he had a phone. So we used to have like a checklist in his phone. So every time before he walks out or leaves school, he used to look at his phone and just know, I've carried this, I've not carried this, let me go back for this. So that aspect of planning made a huge difference for him. And the other bit that the life plan really helped him was the aspect of the leisure and more leaning towards a career. He decided he really likes cooking. So we infused cooking in his weekly routine. And he just started cooking, and he would look for menus. Every week would look at which cuisine are you looking at. Is it meat? Is it fish? Is it pork? Is it lamb? Is it whichever he was picking to work on. And this brought a motivation to do other things. So as much as he did his tuition for math, as much as he had other things, now the focus had moved from one area that was not working so well to other facets that were working really well. So that's one of the real life examples I can share, that when you try create that balance, it removes so much weight on one item and gives the person a bigger perspective of other areas that one can really look at, and they just feel okay. As much as his scores were improving gradually in that subject, the math, it now didn't affect his every area. It now made him know, okay, I might struggle with this one because of this, but I still can be able to achieve so much in life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that study and that success story, I could call it.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, from the side or the viewpoint of the person supporting this student, what are some advice you could give for people who want to go into the same line of profession? And sharing the success story, what are some things that you could maybe give from your experience, things to look out for, things to be mindful of in this line of occupational therapy?
So what you need to be mindful of is that you start creating a rapport with the individual. You become friends with the person. Get to know what is going on well with them, what is not going on well with them. So being able to really relate and engage with the one-on-one person, like one-on-one basis, is really important. Having to just take the time to know the person. Leave your goals somehow behind and just get to understand the person. what is it that you like, what are your interests, things like that. So knowing the person is key. 2, for any form of success, you have to rope in the family. So it was a lot of engagement with his parents. This is what I've identified. Would you like supporting him when you go shopping? Please add this recipe. I know it might not be part of your weekly meal, but just add it because he's doing this. So that engagement and relationship with the family is quite important. And then also have like a global feel to things. Just get to know what's happening in different spaces globally. Then because our clients and our children are global citizens. 1 minute they're here, the next minute they're in another country, the next minute they're back. So having that touch as a professional of what's happening globally is very important.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Now I want to give the lens of maybe someone who wants to work on this well-being and wellness. What are some advices or tips you would give to someone who has observed or noticed that this is something that they want to pursue or want to actually engage in? What would be the advice of someone who wants to work on occupational wellness?
So for one, it will be, I would guide them to contact Solid Minds, because I believe within Solid Minds you have a wide range of consultants that would be able to really guide them specifically onto what they want, because it's so vast and it's so personal that no one size fits all for everybody. So you might need someone who will be able to just walk through with you the journey, and someone who has that wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Actually, I had another question for you. On 10th of October, we're going to have what's called Mental Health, World Mental Health Day. And the theme for this year's World Mental Health Day is It's Time to Prioritize Mental Health in the Workplace. So after all that we have shared, I wanted to ask you, how does this year's theme link with occupational wellness for you?
So the prioritization of mental health in the workplace is quite nice, because when they say workplace, I hear occupation. So when I hear occupation, so when I prioritize mental health in my occupation, it would mean that every time I walk into my office or my space of occupation or whatever occupation I do, I need to have mental well-being. So it's a nice link for me between occupational prioritizing our mental health and the occupational well-being. It's a wonderful tie that when you prioritize, it means you want to have great occupational well-being, and then that means you need to thrive in it. So for me, that link is quite nice.
And thank you for sharing that. I know earlier in the previous segments, you shared some examples and practices that you implement, like spending time with family, learning how to find that balance of, work-life balance, I could say. Because I think that's a lot of the issues that we've been seeing lately is, especially in all occupational spaces, is finding that balance of knowing when I've done my due diligence in the workspace and then now taking time to recharge and to work on myself or to do things that I enjoy. And I guess to close, for the listeners and viewers who are going to be watching this, what are some takeaways that they can keep in mind and meditate and reflect on when we think about occupational wellness and well-being?
So the first takeaway that it's quite crucial as the theme for this year is like you have to prioritize it. You have to prioritize your occupational wellness. It's quite important. If I can say it's a must, if I could use that term. So you have to prioritize your occupational wellness. You have to take charge over it. You have to know what you need. But then for me, I would go for choice. Do you have choice, or are you doing something you like? And if you're not, can you be able to find a way to get to do something you want, something you love, something you're passionate about, something that you can push yourself even when the environment is not so conducive. You can push yourself even when circumstances are not conducive. You can push yourself not to too much extent, but a little bit, even when you're not in a good physical state. So I would go for, there has to be a greater motivation for you to be able to perform your occupation really well. But look for people who are also enjoying they're having healthy occupational wellness. Then you're able to have a community of people who you are practicing almost similar things that helps you to really thrive within the workspace. So prioritizing mental health is also we can add it to prioritizing your occupational wellness.
Thank you so much, Perpetua, for your time. It was a pleasure to have you. And I think one thing that stood out to me when we were sharing and discussing was how occupation is not a term that we should kind of tunnel or make it specific. That occupation is actually very vast and very broad. And I really want to thank you for showing that and enlightening us of that. And hopefully we'll have you again on this podcast.
Thank you, Rose. It was such a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for all of you who watched. If you enjoyed this segment, please like, comment, subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we want you to live out your full potential. And we'll see you very soon.